decided to do today is today will be a very short blot. All right, at most 10 minutes.
Are we doing tomorrow's blot today?
No, I don't even have the Gemara here. So, two dots. So we left off Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel on Lamed Amud Beis, Maseches Tainus, maybe I don't know 13 lines in the bottom. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. There were no other days of celebration, such as the 15th of Av and Yom Kippurim. So Zak the Gemara. So Bishlam Yom Kippurim Mishum Beis Beis Leichal Mechila. I understand why Yom Kippurim, because on that day it's a day of forgiveness and atonement. Yom Shin is the Luchos Akronis, and also it's a day where Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai again with the Luchos. Ella Tubav Mai. What about Tubav? Lamed Amud Beis. Lamed, yeah, right here. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So several reasons now the Gemara will list. So Yom Shehutra Shvatim Lavo Zeh B'Zeh. It was a day where the Psak Halacha came out, right? That the Shvatim were allowed to marry one another. My Darish, what do you mean? What's the drush here? So it says, the pasuk says that it says there by the Ma'aseh B'Schafad, right? He only had daughters, and they were worried about losing their land, and basically the land would go to the daughters, the sons. So if the lands go to the daughters, and they marry people from other Shvatim, then the land is going to be transferred to other Shvatim. So during that time, they did not go ahead and intermarry between the Shvatim, and Davar Zeh lo yanog ela b'dor zeh. But however, it was only this door. It was only during this generation. So Zed Devar, right? So the pasuk says, that generation, right? Those daughters, that generation was not allowed to intermarry. But afterwards, they were. And
was it because of the?
That was only for that.
Right, it was only that generation. Correct. Zed Devar, Zeh Miyutu. No Zeh. Right, the word "zeh" is a mean.
That's all because Pilegesh Bativa, right?
So that's the next one. So Amar of Yosef, Amar of Nachem, Yom Shehutar Shevet Ben Yamin Lavo Bakal. There's what you're referring to, right? So on this day,
there were only 600 men left.
So the Shevet Ben Yamin, right, was forbidden to Lavo Bakal because the Ma'aseh of the Pilegesh. So there, when they violated her. And killed. So therefore, they say, there was a ban on Shevet Ben Yamin. Right. So it says Mimenu, right? Only from Mimenu, these people, this generation, but not the later generation. So afterwards, the next generation, they passed on Tubav. It was passed in that they were allowed to marry Shevet Ben Yamin.
So why Shevet Ben Yamin suffered so much then? Why?
Okay.
Only Shevet Ben Yamin. There were only 600 men. Because when they went to the brothers said whoever has the Gabriel should die.
So
and that's what
they cursed.
There was the just like Yaakov said about the Seraphim, they said about Shevet Binyamin, and they almost totally.
Very good. So my Darish. So Amar Mimenu v'lo mi benenu. Right. It says Mimenu from him and not their sons. And Amar Yechem also Tuba was Yom Shekalaba Mesei Midbar. Right, it was the day that they finished dying in the Midbar. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the direct nevuah, right? Speaking with HaKadosh Baruch Hu during the years when they were in the Midbar because they were cursed. And the says, right, it was after they finished dying. Then Hashem spoke with Moshe. Right, it was upon him. That's when he spoke. There was more than the previous till then. So it was basically they used to go ahead and basically dig their graves on Tisha B'Av, right? And on the 40th year, they assumed there was right, and they assumed right it was from the ages of 2060, and they assumed that in the 40th year that they would be dying once again. And they dug the pits at Tisha B'Av, and nobody died. So they said, "Oh, we must be right." The land. They said, we must sit up until Tu B'Av, full moon. Then they realized, we must. The Gzeira is over, and therefore that's the date of Tu B'Av. Why there was a day of celebration.
So seemingly, the connection on Yom Kippur, the Chaylet of the Egel was
No.
Was Mochel, because
Right, yeah.
gave the second Lugos.
Right.
And Tuba, that's the fate of the Meraglim.
Meraglim was very good. All right. Very good.
What day was that?
Tu B'Av, the
What is-
15th of Av.
Oh.
So and Ula Amar Yom Shebitu Yeshua of Banala Hoshea. Wait, say Yeshua, right? Hoshea ben Benala Perustoyos Shahoshiv Yerubim ben Navat Aladrachim. Were these days when Yerubim basically set up roadblocks and people to prevent people from being Alul Regel. These are the days where those people were nullified. Shalo Yalu Yisrael Regel. At the time when Yerubim set them up, it was in order that they wouldn't be Alul Regel. V'Amar. And he says, and therefore they took those down, those blocks, and they removed the legions from preventing people. And it says, whoever wants to go to be Olel Regel, to be Olel Regel. Top of the page, Lamed Aleph. It was a day when those who were killed in Beitar were permitted to be buried. So so he says, so that day was the when they were murdered in Beitar was right when they destroyed Beitar, so they weren't allowed to bury the dead. So the dead were left there, and they finally came on Tu B'Av to go ahead and bury the dead. And they were masakin in Yavna, a bracha in Birchas Hamazon, Hatov HaMeitiv, right? The last bracha, Hatov Shlo Esrichu, right? Tov that the bodies did not go ahead and deteriorate. Right, and the meitiv they were able to go ahead and bury their dead. And Rabbi Yosef it's also a day where they basically finished chopping wood for the pyre for the mizbeach. Right, and why is that? So Tanya Rabbi Eliezer, the Tanya we learned about Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol from the 15th of Av on. The sun becomes weakened, right? It's not as strong as it is during the peak summer. Once it comes to 15th of Av, and it starts to get weaker, and the sun goes out earlier. And they wouldn't no longer chop wood to use that wood for the mizbeach. Why? Because that wood is not dried out as much because the sun is not as strong, and therefore the sun is not as strong. Perhaps it could be wormy, and that's not fit for the mizbeach. And Amar Rav Menashe v'Karalei. They call it Yom Tov Magal, the day with the broken axe. Knows they stopped, cutting down. The Maisif Yosef. From here on out, when the sun goes down more, there's more night. Therefore, one should go ahead and increase his Torah learning. The Maisif Yosef, and if one goes ahead and increases Torah learning, then his days will be increased. But Lo Yosef, and he who's he who does not add, then Yasif, right? Yasif, right? And he will be ceased. And Tanya Samaya Yasif, Sam Rav Yosef, Tikvar Eimer. His mother would bury him; he'll die earlier. And then we said that was a day when the daughters of Israel used to go out. They would borrow garments for one another, white garments, and go out. And Tanrabanan Bas Melech Shoelas Mi Bas Kohen Gadol. So they would borrow from even less of them. So Bas Melech, the daughter of the king, would borrow from Mi Bas Kohen Gadol. Bas Kohen Gadol Mi Bas Skan. The daughter of the Kohen Gadol would borrow from the assistant Kohen Gadol, and Skan Bas Skan Mi Bas Shemachama, and the daughter of the assistant Kohen Gadol would borrow from the Kohen who leads out to go to battle. Bas Shemachama Mi Bas Kohen Hedyot, from a regular Kohen Hedyot of the Kol Yisrael Shalom Zeh, and all Yisrael one another, in order to not to embarrass she who does not have. And kol hakelim tuna tvila, all their garments require tvila. So the no issues of tuma will be tahara.
The thing people do, like they title their dishes and their clothing.
Well, they had to be right. They had to be first. During those times, they were taharos, right? So they had to go ahead and make sure that they were not, tamei at all. In terms of, there were many things for karbanos and truma and stuff like that one couldn't handle. And even if they would go and meet tabelas, the clothing they would dip, but even if it was folded up inside the drawers. And they would go out in the vineyards, and Tana Misha and Laisha Nifla Shem, who didn't have a wife, would go out there, right? It's a singles event. And Yuchsas Shabahan. And they used to say the one who had good yichus, they say, choose for us. So now the Sabraisa, this explains the Tanabanan. Yafiyas Shabahain Ma Yoamras, what were the pretty ones would say, Snua Nechem Liyafi, right? Set your eyes upon our beauty, Shena Isha Liyafi, because a woman is made for beauty.
Official eye candy.
Right, I can, and Yuchsos, and those who weren't as pretty, but they came from good families. Shabbat Maha Yoimros, what would they say? Right? Check out our Yichus, the Fisha Isha Lubanim, right? Because the woman is for, to have children and see who this, this family is, Mecharos, and those who are ugly, right? And they did not come from good families. What would they say? Shabbat Sama Yoimros, what would they say? Right? You got to go ahead and take yourself a Shem Shemayim. But by the way, make sure you you adorn us with gold and silver and all the nice things. And one more line, Amarullah, Bira, actually we'll stop here. All right, so tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, I guess 6 o'clock is davening, and we'll learn after. And those who want breakfast here, 5 o'clock breakfast here.
The rabbi usually makes the decision.